She bent down to pick up her badge and the human couldn't look away. The busy hum of the office filled the air, papers shuffled, phones rang, and the dull chatter of workers created a constant buzz. The human sat at his desk, fingers tapping nervously on the edge of the table, his mind occupied with thoughts of his first day at the military base. He had no idea what to expect, only that this was his chance to prove himself. Then, it happened. He heard the soft shuffle of feet approaching, followed by the sharp clink of metal, a sound so clear it cut through the usual noise. He turned, half expecting to see a superior officer or a fellow recruit, but it was her. She wasn't a typical soldier. The way she carried herself was different, almost as if she belonged to a world of her own. The human watched unnoticed as she bent down to pick up something from the ground. Her badge glinting under the fluorescent lights. For a brief moment, time seemed to slow. The human couldn't look away. The way she moved with effortless grace sent a strange jolt through him. It wasn't just her beauty, it was something more. Her presence seemed to fill the room, making everything else fade into the background. His gaze lingered a little too long, and in that moment, she looked up, meeting his eyes. There was a brief flicker of surprise in her expression, but she quickly masked it with a smile. "Is there something on your mind?" she asked, her voice cool and calm yet oddly intense. The human froze, unsure of how to respond. He quickly averted his gaze, his face flushing with embarrassment. "No, just—" "Sorry," he stammered, his heart racing. She nodded, still smiling, as if she hadn't noticed his discomfort. But in her eyes there was something else, a challenge perhaps, or an invitation to look deeper. Before he could speak again, she turned and walked away, her footsteps silent but deliberate, as if every step held meaning. As she disappeared into the crowd of soldiers, the human sat there, his thoughts racing. He couldn't explain why he felt this way, why his heart pounded so loudly in his chest, or why he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She was just another soldier, right? Just another face in the crowd, but she wasn't. Her presence had shaken him in a way he couldn't quite understand. There was something about her, something hidden, something that pulled at him like a magnet. Was it just attraction? Or was it something deeper, something dangerous? He shook his head, trying to focus on the task at hand. But even as he forced himself back into work, his mind kept drifting back to her, the way she bent down, the way she looked at him with those intense eyes, and the strange pull he felt in his chest. Was it fate, or was it something more? He didn't know. But he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't ignore the way she made him feel. And as the hours passed, a sense of unease settled in. She was not like the others. There was something mysterious about her, something he needed to understand. But would he dare to uncover it? Would he risk everything for the answers she seemed to hold? Or would he turn away, pretending that nothing had happened? The questions gnawed at him unanswered. And as the day dragged on, the human found himself looking over his shoulder, hoping to catch another glimpse of her. He didn't know why, but he couldn't stop himself. It was as if something inside him had already made the decision. And no matter how much he tried to deny it, he was already caught in her web. The next day, the human found himself in a meeting room, the tension in the air almost palpable. He wasn't sure why he had been called in, but the atmosphere felt different, charged in a way he couldn't explain. He sat at the table, eyes scanning the room, searching for anything that would give him a hint about the purpose of the gathering. The door opened and she walked in. Her presence was undeniable, as if the room itself shifted to make room for her. She didn't glance around. Her eyes locked onto his immediately, and there was no mistaking the intent behind her gaze. For a moment, the room seemed to disappear, leaving only the two of them. He swallowed, unsure of what to make of it. She took a seat across from him without a word, and for the first time, the human realized just how unnerving it was to be in her presence. The room settled back into its usual quiet buzz, but the human's focus remained entirely on her. She didn't speak, just waited, her eyes never leaving him. Her silence was heavier than any words could have been, and the longer she sat there, the more the human felt as though he was being drawn into something he didn't understand. He tried to focus, trying to make sense of the situation. But the more he thought, the more it seemed as though there was something about her that was far beyond ordinary. Finally, she spoke, her voice calm, but there was an edge to it, like a hidden danger that she kept carefully controlled. "I've noticed you," she said. The words were simple, but they hung in the air like a challenge. The human shifted uncomfortably in his seat, not sure if he was supposed to respond. I don't understand, he said, his voice a little more nervous than he intended. Her eyes narrowed slightly, as though she had expected this. "There's more to you than meets the eye, isn't there?" she asked, leaning forward slightly. "I can see it. You're not like the others." His heart skipped a beat. Was this an accusation? A compliment? Or something else entirely? "I don't know what you mean," he replied, his voice more defensive than he had intended. She leaned back in her chair, her gaze never leaving him. "You're new, but you're already here. There's something about you, something different. I can feel it." Her words hit him like a wave. Was she trying to intimidate him? Or was she genuinely interested? Her eyes seemed to study him as though she was trying to see beyond the surface to something deeper. The human shifted in his seat again, feeling increasingly uneasy. There was a weight to her words that he couldn't ignore, a sense of danger simmering just beneath the surface. "I'm just trying to do my job," he said, his voice a little quieter now. She smiled, but it wasn't a comforting smile. "Everyone here is just trying to do their job. But not everyone makes it this far. And not everyone is as interesting as you." The human couldn't help but feel a shiver run down his spine. There was no doubt now she was not like the others. She wasn't here by chance. She was here for a reason, and whatever that reason was, it had something to do with him. "What do you want from me?" he asked, unable to keep the words from slipping out. His voice was softer now, almost a whisper, but she heard him clearly. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she simply watched him, her eyes calculating as if weighing his worth. It was as though she was deciding whether or not he was someone she could trust, someone she could use. "I'm not sure yet," she finally said, her tone measured, as though she was keeping something from him, something important. "But I'm starting to think you might be more valuable than you realize." The word sent a chill through him. What did she mean by that? Before he could respond, the door to the room opened and another officer walked in, breaking the moment. The human's attention snapped away from her, but the lingering feeling of unease remained. He stood quickly, almost too quickly, trying to shake off the sense that something had just shifted in the air. She didn't move, her gaze still fixed on him as if she could see right through him. As he turned to leave, he caught a glimpse of her once more, her eyes following him as he walked out the door. The encounter had left him shaken but also intrigued. There was something about her, something dangerous perhaps, that he couldn't shake. And now, for better or worse, he was part of her world. As the door clicked shut behind him, the human couldn't help but wonder what he had just walked into. Whatever it was, he had a feeling it wasn't going to be easy to get out of. The questions that had started in the back of his mind now consumed him. Who was she really? What was she hiding? And more importantly, what did she want from him? The human didn't know, but he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to be able to ignore her for long. The next few days blurred together for the human. Every moment, every step felt like it was leading him closer to something he couldn't define but felt in his bones. His every action seemed to be under her watchful eye. It was as though he was trapped in her orbit, drawn to her without understanding why. He couldn't shake the feeling that she knew more about him than he did about himself. He found himself lingering in hallways, glancing over his shoulder, hoping to catch another glimpse of her. Each time their paths crossed, there was a brief exchange, a look, a word, a gesture, something that left him more unsettled than before. But the more he tried to ignore it, the more the tension built. One afternoon, as the human walked through the corridors, he spotted her. She was standing by a door at the far end of the hall, her posture relaxed, but there was something about the way she held herself that made him pause. It was as though she was waiting for him, and in that moment the air seemed to grow thick with anticipation. Without a word, she nodded for him to approach, and though every part of him screamed to walk away, he found himself drawn forward. As he reached her, she didn't smile, didn't speak at first, just watched him closely, her gaze unreadable. He swallowed, suddenly feeling vulnerable. "What is it?" he asked, his voice quieter than usual. She took a slow breath, her expression never changing. "I think you're starting to understand," she said, her voice calm but heavy with meaning. "That thing inside you, the thing that brought you here." He blinked, confused. "I don't understand." What thing? Her eyes seemed to pierce right through him, searching, assessing. The thing that makes you different. The reason you can't stop thinking about me. His heart pounded in his chest. His mouth went dry. It was as though she had reached into his mind and pulled out the very thoughts he had been trying to ignore. "Why are you doing this?" he whispered. "Why me?" Her gaze softened, but there was no pity in it, only understanding. "Because you're important. And because you're not the only one who's been chosen." The human's mind raced. Chosen for what? What was she talking about? He opened his mouth to ask, but she raised a hand, stopping him. "Not yet," she said, her tone almost gentle. "There's still more for you to learn. More to see." She turned, gesturing for him to follow. With hesitation, he did, his feet moving almost on their own accord as he followed her down the hallway. They reached a small, nondescript door tucked away in a corner of the building. She unlocked it with a key he didn't know she had and gestured for him to enter. The room inside was dimly lit, with only a few pieces of old furniture scattered around. But there on the far wall was something unexpected, a large ornate mirror, its surface cracked and covered with dust. "What is this place?" the human asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stepped toward the mirror, her fingers grazing the dusty surface. "This is where things begin," she said softly. "This is where the truth starts to make sense." The human felt a strange pull toward the mirror, but as he stepped closer, something in his chest tightened. There was something about it, something unsettling about the way it seemed to reflect not just the room but a deeper part of him. He couldn't put his finger on it, but it was as if the mirror was alive, watching him. She turned to face him. "I knew you'd be drawn to it," she said, her voice low. "That's the thing about mirrors, they don't just show us what we want to see. They show us what we are, what we're capable of." He was still staring at the reflection in the mirror, his own eyes locking onto the image of himself. For a moment, he almost didn't recognize the man staring back at him. His reflection seemed different. There was a fierceness in his eyes, a depth he didn't recognize. It was as if the man in the mirror wasn't just a reflection of him. It was the man he could become. "What is this?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. "You're seeing it," she said. "The truth of who you are, the part of you that you've been hiding from." The human shook his head, trying to push the unease away. "No, this isn't me. This is just some trick." She stepped closer, her presence calming despite the tension in the room. "It's not a trick. It's who you really are deep down, the part of you that's been waiting to wake up." The words hit him harder than he expected. It was as if she had unlocked something inside him, something he hadn't even known was there. He looked back at the mirror, and for the first time, he saw something different in his own eyes, a darkness, a power, a purpose. "Why am I seeing this now?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "Because the time has come," she replied. "The time for you to stop running from yourself. To embrace what you were always meant to be." The human turned away from the mirror, his mind racing. His heart pounded in his chest, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he was standing on the edge of something monumental. Something that would change everything. But was he ready for it? Could he really step into a world that held so many unknowns? Or was he too afraid to face the truth that lay just beyond the surface? He didn't have the answers, not yet. But one thing was certain. Nothing was ever going to be the same again, and no matter how hard he tried to deny it, he knew he was already in too deep. The days following his visit to the mirror were a blur, but one thing remained clear. His mind was no longer his own. The thoughts he had tried so hard to bury kept resurfacing, and every time they did, the same question echoed in his mind. What am I really a part of? The human tried to push the thoughts away, to focus on his daily tasks and not dwell on the strange encounter with her. But the more he tried to ignore it, the stronger the pull became. She had opened something inside him, something he didn't know he was capable of, and now it was alive within him, gnawing at his thoughts, at his very soul. It was late one evening when the human was called into the command center. He wasn't expecting much, just another routine meeting. But as he walked down the hallway toward the door, the unease that had been growing inside him flared into something sharper, more urgent. He couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't going to be an ordinary briefing. The door slid open with a soft hiss, and there she was, standing in the center of the room, her back to him. This time there was no smile, no cryptic words. Her posture was rigid, tense, like someone about to make an important decision. When she turned, the human immediately noticed the change in her. There was something darker in her eyes, something that made his heart beat faster, more erratically than it should have. "You came," she said, her voice a little colder than before. "I wasn't sure you would." He paused, unsure of how to respond. "Of course I came. You said—" "I know what I said," she interrupted, her voice sharper now. "But this isn't just about me. This is about you." The human's throat went dry. He took a step forward, but the air between them felt thick, charged. He couldn't quite place it, but the tension felt heavier than before. "I've been trying to figure out what's happening to me," he said, his voice quieter than usual. "Why I can't shake this feeling. Why I keep seeing things differently." She watched him, her gaze steady but her lips pressed into a thin line. "You're starting to see the truth. You're starting to realize what you really are." The words hit him harder than he expected. "What do you mean? What am I?" She stepped closer, her presence overwhelming, filling the room like an invisible force. "You've always known. Deep down, you've known what you're capable of. But you were afraid. You were afraid of what it would mean if you accepted it." The human shook his head, trying to make sense of it all. "I don't understand. What am I supposed to do with this? What does this all mean?" She sighed, her breath soft but heavy. "It means you have a choice. You can keep pretending that you don't belong here. You can continue to run from who you really are, or you can embrace it." He felt a chill run down his spine, the weight of her words sinking into his chest. She wasn't just talking about his job, his purpose here. She was talking about something deeper, something fundamental. "Embrace it?" he whispered. "What do you want from me?" Her eyes narrowed slightly, her expression hardening. "I want you to take your place. To stop being afraid. To stop hiding from your true self." The human's heart hammered in his chest. He was drowning in the storm of thoughts crashing through his mind. Could he really accept what she was telling him? Could he embrace this power she was speaking of? "You have a gift," she continued, her voice softening. "A power you've been too scared to acknowledge. But it's time to stop running. It's time to stop hiding." He wanted to deny it, to walk away and pretend it wasn't happening, but he couldn't. He couldn't ignore the truth that was staring him in the face. The strange feelings, the unease, the pull he felt toward her. It was all connected. And now he was being given the choice to walk away or step into a world he wasn't sure he was ready for. The human stood there, frozen, torn between fear and desire. Fear of what he might become if he embraced this power, fear of the consequences that might follow. But there was also a yearning inside him, something that longed to break free, to stop hiding and face what he was meant to be. Her gaze softened slightly, as though she could sense his internal struggle. "You don't have to decide right away," she said quietly. "But remember this, the truth doesn't wait forever. Sooner or later you'll have to make a choice." The human opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He could feel the weight of her words pressing down on him, suffocating him. Every fiber of his being screamed to run, to leave this place and never look back. But something else, something deep inside him urged him to stay, to face the truth. "Why now?" he asked, finally finding his voice. "Why are you telling me this?" She took a step closer, her presence filling the space between them. "Because you're ready. Whether you believe it or not, you're already a part of something much bigger than you realize. And whether you want it or not, your choices will affect more than just you." The human's mind raced as he processed her words. He had been caught in something far greater than himself, far beyond his control. But now it was up to him whether he embraced it or turned his back on it forever. As the tension hung thick in the air, he knew one thing. This wasn't just a choice about power or control. It was a choice about who he was going to become. And no matter what decision he made, there was no going back. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment pressing on his chest. The truth was within his grasp, but was he ready to accept it? Or would he walk away, forever haunted by the questions he would never be able to answer? Only time would tell. The human walked away from the command center that night, his thoughts tangled in a web of uncertainty. The quiet hum of the base's machinery seemed louder than usual, as though everything around him was pressing in, urging him to make a decision he wasn't ready to face. His mind replayed the conversation, her words echoing in his head. "You're ready. You don't have to decide right away. The truth doesn't wait forever." The weight of those words lingered in the air, like a shadow that followed him everywhere. Every step he took seemed to draw him closer to something he couldn't understand, yet something he couldn't ignore. What had she meant? What was it that she saw in him? More importantly, what was it that he saw in himself? The corridors of the base were eerily quiet at night. He passed by rooms filled with soldiers, their faces blank in sleep, unaware of the turmoil twisting inside him. For the first time, he felt out of place, like a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. The life he had known, the person he thought he was, it all seemed so far away now. There was a new reality in front of him, one that he could no longer avoid. He reached his quarters and sat down on the edge of his bed. The room was dark, the only light coming from the soft glow of a distant lamp. The air felt thick, as though it too was waiting for him to make a choice that could change everything. His fingers brushed against the small badge that he had received upon joining the base. The same badge she had picked up that day, the same one that had sparked this whole chain of events. He hadn't thought much about it before, but now it felt like more than just a symbol of his new life. It felt like a marker, a boundary between the life he had led and the unknown future that lay before him. He stood up and walked to the mirror. The reflection staring back at him seemed different now. There was something in his eyes, something raw, something powerful. He could feel it deep inside him like a dormant force just waiting to be awakened. It wasn't just a physical change. It was a shift in his very being, in the core of who he was. His hand hovered over the mirror's surface. He wanted to look away, to deny the truth staring back at him, but he couldn't. He was too far gone. He had already seen too much. The choice wasn't about whether he was ready. It was about whether he was willing to accept what had always been inside him. A soft knock at the door broke his reverie. He turned, startled, unsure of who it could be. His heart raced as he approached the door and opened it slowly. Standing there, her posture relaxed yet imposing, was the woman who had turned his world upside down. She didn't say anything at first, just studied him with that same intense gaze. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was heavy, filled with unspoken questions and answers waiting to be revealed. "I've been waiting for you," she said finally, her voice quiet but certain. The human didn't know what to say. He wanted to ask her 1,000 questions, wanted to understand what she saw in him, what she wanted from him, but the words didn't come. Instead, he simply nodded, his mind swirling with conflicting emotions. "I know you're torn," she continued, stepping inside. "I know it's not easy, but the truth is this, once you see it, there's no going back. Once you understand what you're truly capable of, you can't forget it. You can't unknow it." Her words hung in the air, the weight of them pressing on him. He could feel the truth in them, and it terrified him. There was so much at stake, more than just his future, more than just his life. He had seen glimpses of what he could be, of the power within him, but power came with consequences, and the question lingered. Was he ready to embrace those consequences? She stepped closer, her eyes never leaving his. "You don't have to decide tonight. But know this, you've already made the choice. You've always had the power to decide your path. You just need to trust it." The human stood frozen for a moment, the silence enveloping them both. The choice had been laid before him, but it wasn't just about the power or the truth. It was about who he would become. Would he remain the man he thought he was, the man who had walked into this base with no knowledge of what was to come, or would he become something else entirely? He closed his eyes, feeling the weight of the moment press down on him. His mind raced with possibilities, with questions he wasn't sure he had answers to. But one thing was clear, he couldn't stay where he was. He couldn't ignore what he had seen, what he had felt. He had already stepped into something bigger than himself, and there was no turning back now. When he opened his eyes again, he met her gaze. For the first time, he wasn't afraid. The fear was still there, but it no longer held him back. Instead, there was a calmness in his chest, a quiet certainty that he hadn't felt before. "I'm ready," he said quietly, his voice steady but filled with something else, something new. A small smile tugged at the corners of her lips. "I knew you would be." In that moment, the human realized something profound. This wasn't just about the truth or the power. It was about him accepting himself, accepting what he had always been deep down. The choice wasn't about what was outside him. It was about what was inside. And as he stepped forward toward the unknown, he felt the weight of his decision settle within him. This was the beginning of something new, something far greater than he had ever imagined. The path ahead wasn't clear, but he knew one thing for certain. He had made his choice, and there was no going back.